It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story.
David? Yeah.
The child killer who walked free for 30 years, finally convicted of the murder of his 7-year-old victim.
Why wasn't he looked into, and why wasn't that address 3 doors from Nikki's grandparents looked at?
Nikki Allan's family tell us they now have justice, but also question why police failed to find her killer many years ago. Also tonight, why economic growth is on strike, the evidence that industrial unrest and high inflation are holding back the economy. On the offensive in eastern Ukraine as Russia admits its soldiers have been forced back around Bakhmut. The Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner who triggered investigations into his political opponents revealed by Sky News. And null point for politics, why the organisers of Eurovision won't let Ukraine's president speak. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in the press preview from 10:30. Hello, very good evening. A child killer who was able to live free for decades was finally convicted today. David Boyd murdered 7-year-old Nikki Allan in 1992. Despite already having convictions involving underage girls, he was seen as a witness rather than a suspect by police at the time. Today, his victim's family told us they finally had justice, but questioned why officers hadn't brought him to account before. Katerina Vitozzi reports from Newcastle Crown Court.
Time hasn't diminished the brutality of this crime. In 1992, 7-year-old Nikki Allan was abducted, viciously beaten and repeatedly stabbed. Her body left in the basement of an abandoned building close to her home in Sunderland. A year after her murder, one man was tried but found not guilty. The mystery of who did this haunting Nikki's family for decades. Today, David Boyd was finally found guilty of her murder.
I feel amazing. Honestly, I can't even explain it. I feel ecstatic. Never thought I would have heard that. I was starting to give up after 25 years. Starting to give up hope. Nikki was 7, I was nearly 9, so she was really close to me. Like, I've lost my other half. Never thought it would come. Yes, justice for Nikki Allan.
David? Yeah.
David Boyd is now 55. He first became a suspect in 2018.
So I'm arresting you on suspicion, OK, of that offence. You do not have to say...
At the time of Nikki's disappearance, Boyd lived in the same block of flats as her family, was dating her babysitter, and the prosecution said this photo from when Boyd was in his 20s matched the description from a witness who'd seen a man walking with a young girl on the night Nikki was killed.
When Nikki was murdered, why wasn't he looked into, and why wasn't that address 3 doors from Nikki's grandparents looked at?
During this trial, the jury and Nikki's mum learnt that David Boyd had been previously convicted for sexually assaulting a young girl and that he'd told a social worker he'd had sexual fantasies about children.
Because my daughter's gone and it should have been justice years ago. The only thing I'm getting out of this is my daughters and my grandkids didn't have to fight for justice. I fought so hard not to put these up. Not to put them through these.
David Boyd's DNA was found on Nikki's clothes and police matched it using technology that simply didn't exist 30 years ago. But Nikki's family believed that the initial police investigation was insufficient and failed to take into account things like witness statements from the night she disappeared. But today, police described this as one of the most complex cold cases their force has ever handled.
Nikki Allan would have been 37 now, and who knows what her life could have been. The pain and suffering that he has caused, and to so many people, is immeasurable.
When the guilty verdict was delivered, in court, Nikki Allan's family stood up and shouted. From them, really, there was just one word: justice. Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News, Newcastle.
Now, you might think it's remarkable the economy grew at all in the first 3 months of this year, with the war in Ukraine, stubbornly high food and fuel prices and strikes, which kept many people off the trains and forced millions of parents to take time off to stay at home looking after their children. Well, the economy did grow, however, from January to March, though by the smallest amount measurable, just 0.1%. However, the economy shrank in March by 0.3%, largely due to falls in retail and car sales and the public sector strikes. There were more of those today, with train drivers returning to the picket lines, as our business and economics correspondent Gurpreet Narwan reports.
The trains are coming to a halt, and so is the economy. Many businesses are counting the cost. Fewer people are visiting, and they've got less to spend. On Saturdays, business at this gift shop is down by half.
I've just noticed that the days where the strikes are happening are my quietest days. And obviously over the last few months it's been tube and bus as well having strikes, but the trains have had the biggest impact. It just means that how can we survive? How can we pay our bills if people do not come in?
Even when the trains are running, people are hardly in the mood to spend. Wages aren't keeping up with inflation, and workers like Flora have had enough.
We are striking as teachers because teachers are being asked to do more and more with less and less. We tighten our belts, we think very carefully about the food that we buy. I have colleagues who do second jobs and work in a supermarket. I have colleagues who visit food banks.
The teachers aren't alone. Industrial action is rife across the public sector, a sign of the economic turmoil we face.
The economy is flagging under the strain of high inflation and high taxes, which is leaving people with less disposable income each month. No wonder they're protesting about this decline in their living standards, but strikes like these are doing damage of their own to the economy.
GDP has still not recovered to its pre-pandemic size. First lockdowns caused growth to plummet, but the country is now battling other economic shocks, including Brexit and the Ukraine war. Ministers, however, are focusing on the positives.
These are much better figures than anyone would possibly have predicted even 3 months ago. But there is still much work to do. We still have inflation that is much too high. That's causing a lot of pressure for families up and down the country. That's why we've got to stick to our plan to get inflation down, to get growth up, and to get the economy motoring in the way that we all want.
Inflation was a major topic of conversation at a meeting of G7 finance ministers in Japan. But despite his optimistic comments, few among them will have been feeling these economic woes as acutely as Jeremy Hunt. Gurpreet Narwan, Sky News.
Ukraine has made gains close to the city of Bakhmut in what could be the sign of the beginning of its long-promised offensive. These pictures, released by the Ukrainian military, show what it says are its troops advancing in the region. Russia's defence ministry acknowledged its forces in one area had fallen back. Ukraine, though, faces some significant challenges in claiming back land, as our military analyst Michael Clark now explains.
The next few days and weeks in Ukraine are likely to be a picture of confusion with different messaging about who's advancing where. Now, there are two likely strategic aims to Ukraine. Firstly, to reclaim the Donbass in the east. That, after all, is the area that Russia says it wants to occupy, so the Ukrainians want to throw the Russians out of that area. But secondly, Ukraine could regain a tremendous advantage by cutting off the land bridge between this area, which includes the key city of Melitopol and the strategically important Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station, right down to the coast. And if they could break up this land bridge between Ukraine and Crimea, then that would weaken Russia's lines tremendously, and it would be a great political benefit to the Ukrainians. An offensive in the south rather than the east might also be easier due to more favourable ground conditions for heavy equipment like battle tanks and artillery. So, here is a satellite image of Tokmak in the south, in Zaporizhzhia Oblast. Now, if you look very closely, the beige lines that look almost like scratches along the land, they're the trenches, the defensives, that the Russians have already dug and built in. But let's say colour in yellow the extent of the network that we know is there. This is what they've really built there that we know of. And then, of course, put in the water, put in the rivers that are also in that area, and then colour in red the high ground, because the high ground is critical for both attack and defence. Whoever controls the high ground has got observation, they've got the artillery advantage. It really matters. And so you can see that any commander wanting to take this area has got to get over the water, they've got to actually get round the defensives, they've got to capture the high ground, and the defenders will be working with all of those things to prevent that from happening. Which is why, as the Ukrainians think about their heavy metal, all their tanks and armoured vehicles, they've also got to think about their bridging equipment, their engineering, all the technical things that allow their heavy metal to actually do the job. Now, the weather is improving in this area. It's about 20 degrees at the moment. It's going to be about 25 degrees in 2 weeks' time. It's drying up. The ground is drying out. So it's perfect for armoured vehicles. So the time is now for this sort of offensive to take place. But when it does, it will be like a chess game between one commander and another, each trying to outthink the other in the use of the ground, the water, the defences and the high ground. And this will be taking place all through Ukraine, not just in the south around Melitopol, but all through Ukraine, wherever the Ukrainians think they can break through. It'll be a series of little chess games between one commander and another.
Michael Clark with that analysis. Turkey's President Erdogan has become synonymous with his country during his 20 years at the top, but he's facing perhaps his greatest challenge in elections on Sunday. And the man who might defeat him has told Sky News he wants freedom, not authoritarian leadership. Our Europe correspondent Adam Parsons spoke to him and sent this report from Istanbul.
This is Istanbul's newest mosque, and today opened by Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
Ya Allah! Bismillah.
For 2 decades, the president has reshaped Turkey, giving himself vast power, disrupting global diplomacy, picking battles with the West. He's now geeing up his supporters for the weekend's presidential election. 3 hours away in the city of Bursa, support amid the bustle. This stall holder tells me he loves the president from the heart, that he'd vote for him 1,000,000 times if he could. But in truth, Erdogan's grip on power is under strain. His political opponents have united behind a single candidate. His name is Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, and he tells me his country's been broken by Erdogan's rule.
Türkiye'nin kolonlarında ciddi bir tahribat var. Yasama, yargı, yürütme dediğimiz demokrasinin ana kolonlarında ciddi bir tahribat var. Bunu düzeltmek istiyoruz.
He tells me he will reconcile his country, support Sweden joining NATO and repair Turkey's fractured international relations.
Biz Batı'nın, uygar dünyanın bir parçası olmak istiyoruz. Ülkemizde demokrasi istiyoruz. Otoriter bir yönetim istemiyoruz. Özgürlükler istiyoruz.
Are you worried about any dirty tricks on the day of the election?
Oynuyor zaten. Hayatımda onun kadar yalan söyleyen ikinci bir kişi görmedim.
Outside, the crowd is gathering to hear him.
Well, in just a few minutes' time, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, the man who has united Turkey's opposition parties, will come up to this stage to deliver one of his final speeches before Sunday's election. And that is the scene that will greet him. Thousands of his supporters, increasingly confident that he will be the next president.
Kılıçdaroğlu tells them to work for a brighter future. His logo is a heart symbol. Many here see him as the opportunity for a new start.
I am 44 years old. 20 years, maybe the best years of my life, have been spent under oppression and intimidation and in an atmosphere of crisis.
Kılıçdaroğlu could be the country's next president or just another footnote in Erdogan's story of dominance. This is a desperately close election in a chronically divided nation. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Bursa.
Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan said the country's judiciary was the only hope now left after a court ordered that he should be freed on bail. It follows days of protest and violence at his treatment that the government blamed on him. Our correspondent Cordelia Lynch sent this report from Islamabad.
It has been a tumultuous week for Pakistan's former Prime Minister. This, a full circle moment. Imran Khan back at the place where he was first arrested, this time hoping to be freed, whilst taking aim at those who detained him.
I was inside the High Court. They had no justification for my arrest. They abducted me. The first time they showed me an arrest warrant was inside the jail. It happens in the law of the jungle.
But he does still have faith in one institution.
I must say I expected this from our judiciary, because the only hope now left, the only thin line between a banana republic and democracy is that judiciary. That's the only hope we have now. Otherwise, there is no rule of law here.
The judiciary has given him some respite. Mr. Khan granted 2 weeks bail. But Imran Khan is far from out of the woods. The threat of being re-arrested hangs heavily over him. But that comes with a degree of risk for the government too. This is an election year. The government is trying to focus its message on the violence, not the arrest.
The attacks on sensitive buildings and installations were called, carried out, planned. Who was the planner? Imran Niazi. Who was instigator? Imran Niazi.
It is a complex game of chess ahead, one fraught with danger. Imran Khan needs to inspire, not incite. The government needs to keep a popular opponent at bay and still convince the country it can be fair and trusted. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Islamabad, Pakistan.
Back here, and Sky News has discovered that a well-connected Conservative police and crime commissioner triggered 2 different police investigations into his political opponents in recent weeks. Steve Turner was campaigning to become a Tory councillor in the local elections. His opponents found themselves investigated by Cleveland police, the same force Mr Turner oversees. Our Deputy Political Editor Sam Coates reports.
I woke up to a couple of early morning calls. I missed on my mobile, and it was the fraud police.
Hundreds of miles from Westminster, politics and power exist away from the glare of the national spotlight.
I was frustrated.
This man ran Labour's local election campaign in the northeast town of Redcar. Just over a week before polling day, fraud police arrived on his doorstep and said they were investigating his campaign leaflets.
2 plainclothes policemen came into my front room. I was sat down. I did feel a little bit imposed on because they were stood up. I did feel interrogated slightly.
That visit and police visits to the homes of 2 other Labour activists triggered by this man, Steve Turner. Not only was he their rival Tory election candidate, he is also the Police and Crime Commissioner for this area.
It's an excellent job, really enjoying it. It's everything I expected it to be and more.
A job that means he oversees the very officers investigating his opponents following his complaint. On Tuesday, he failed to get elected as a councillor, losing in a 3rd recount to the same Labour activists that were investigated. Steve Turner told Sky News he complained to the council about this Labour leaflet and that it was standard for the complaint to be passed to the police. Fraud officers told one of the activists that they were there because the leaflet had upset Steve and no action would be taken. But Mr Turner told us that he did not direct the police response. Cleveland police said that the inquiries were routine. His wife, also standing unsuccessfully in the same ward, defended his conduct.
My husband was a candidate in this race and he has every right, the same as any other member of the public, to report offences to the police.
You don't think that there is an evident conflict of interest involving the police, getting the council to involve the police in a race in which he is involved?
I do not know. If it was a conflict of interest, that would mean that I would never be able to report any crime that was happening to me as an individual.
On his Facebook page, he said that the police agreed that there was disinformation. How did he come to that judgment? Ms Turner?
No comment.
No comment.
What's striking is the scale of involvement from Cleveland police. 3 separate visits to 3 different Labour Party members. Even though the police are quite upfront with them, there was no offence committed. And then they phoned Tory Steve Turner with a readout of what went on. Could this have anything to do with the Tory candidate also having oversight of the people in the building behind me? Sky News has discovered a second political opponent of Steve Turner was investigated by police after Turner made a harassment complaint via the local 101 hotline. Police told the individual there was no case to answer. Some claim Turner's behaviour could amount to an abuse of power.
The perception is that he abused his power in this case. Nobody else would have got the level of attention that the police gave him and this allegation that he got. And that clearly demonstrates that he had the power to make it happen, whereas you and I would never have been able to do that.
This episode revealed by a quirk, a focus on Redcar as the final election result to declare, does sunlight shine often enough in all parts of our democracy? Sam Coates, Sky News, Redcar.
Police are preparing to dig for the remains of a missing student after an alleged confession to her murder by serial killer Levi Belfield. In an interview with detectives this week, the former nightclub bouncer said that he had hidden her body in Woodland 24 years ago. The 54-year-old is serving a whole life sentence for the murders of 2 young women and the schoolgirl Millie Dowler in 2002. Elon Musk has announced that the former head of advertising at NBC, Linda Yaccarino, is the new CEO of Twitter. Musk, the current chief executive, tweeted that Yaccarino will mainly focus on business operations while he focuses on product design and new technology. The Archbishop of Canterbury has been convicted of speeding just days after leading the coronation of the King. Justin Welby was ordered to pay £510 for exceeding a 20-mile-an-hour limit in the Kennington area of London last October. The way America can prevent migrants crossing from Mexico is in a state of flux tonight. Regulations which dated from Donald Trump's presidency ran out last night, replaced with new rules introduced by President Biden. Our US correspondent James Matthews is in Texas for us tonight. James.
Thank you very much indeed, Jonathan. Yes, the Department of Homeland Security in the United States, it's saying today that it didn't see any surge at the midnight moment when the so-called Title 42 ran out. But what it can deny is that there has been a record surge, daily record figures of migrants crossing the border in the run-up to that midnight moment when the law changed. Now, we've spent the day here in New Mexico, on the mountain that looms large over the US-Mexico border. Let's have a look now at a day in the life of Mount Cristo Rey. A helicopter and, to the right, an officer on horseback conduct border patrol high on Mount Cristo Rey, where America meets Mexico. With our cameras, we found what they were looking for. Migrants concealed among rocks, one in the middle watching us with binoculars. They didn't care for the reverse angle, one throwing a stone at the drone. By vehicle, Border Patrol chased reports of migrants on the ground, while the helicopter continued its search by air. And they kept coming. More, and yet more. It's easy to see why migrants would choose this route to make a border crossing. Much of the border is lined by this, a 21-foot-high fence. But take a look here. At this particular point, what separates America from Mexico is concrete, a foot high. On the mountain where they couldn't build the wall, border crossing is a daily routine, and it's where migrants see a clear path to the United States. A white marker high up denotes the US border. To be here is to see the difficulty in stemming the flow of immigration, Title 42 or not. When the old law passed, US Homeland Security said there had been no substantial increase in migrant numbers, but they've acknowledged failings over time.
Our system has been broken for more than 2 decades. It was last reformed in the 1990s. So that is the first point. The second point is we have not received from Congress the resources that we need and that we requested.
It is a political story that grows with the numbers. They kept on coming over Mount Cristo Rey towards New Mexico. The mountain's reminder that this is a tale with people at its heart. Well, there you go. It was a busy day. That was one sector of the border at New Mexico. And speak to Border patrol officers, and they tell you that some days they can be chasing up to 500 migrants, and that's the day after Title 42. So on the face of it here, and it is a microcosm, there's no great change with the law. The challenge for Joe Biden is considerable, of course. He is reinforcing the message that there will be tough new restrictions. He's talking about the expulsion of migrants who don't apply for asylum before they get into the United States and who don't apply online, saying that they could be expelled for 5 years and not allowed to return. If they do, they could be criminally prosecuted. So that has prompted a fear amongst migrants that entry restrictions could be tougher following the end of Title 42. That clearly has fueled a surge of sorts that we've seen in recent days and weeks. That's been compounded by misinformation provided by human smugglers. So that is the basis on which we have seen the practical experience here. It is big on politics, clearly. It will be one of the defining issues of the coming election, a defining issue of the future for President Joe Biden.
James, thank you. James Matthews there in Texas. Finally, the President just wants to show his love and thank the UK, so let him speak. So say the Eurovision, I shudder to say, legends, Jedward, who are unlikely allies of Rishi Sunak. But speaking to Sky News, they backed the Prime Minister's call for Volodymyr Zelensky to be allowed to address the song contest audience tomorrow night. The organisers say he won't be allowed to. In Liverpool, the performers are getting ready, as our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer now reports.
Belting out Eurovision classics in the street. If you're a fan, what more could you want? A reliable public train network, you say? ASLEF, the first ones to score nil points with fans here. But that's not stopping stand-in host Liverpool from going for it. The UK's entrant May Muller itching to get started.
I thought I was excited before, but now I'm here, I'm even more excited, and I feel like I'm just ready to go now. It's so much build-up, and then now I'm like, it's basically here.
For the first time, we can show you this, a sneak peek at rehearsals and what the 160 million viewers expected to tune in will see.
The production is immense. Imagine being on the lighting desk with 79,000 lighting cues programmed in. It's no spoiler to say, this is going to be spectacular.
Our concept and the architecture of our set revolves around a big hug, as if Liverpool is welcoming the Ukraine, Europe, and the world with big open arms.
Incorporating Ukraine, its music and people is central to what you'll see in the show. But Rishi Sunak, seemingly wanting in on the action after hosting his own Eurovision reception, wading into the decision of organisers not to let President Zelensky make an address over concerns the event could become too politicised, insisting the values of what the Ukrainians are fighting for are not political, they're fundamental. Eurovision veterans Jedward think he might have a point.
Yeah, I think it'd be like a great way to thank the UK for hosting it for Ukraine. And I feel like the president, it's not so political. I think he just wants to share his love and thank the UK for doing such a great job.
The show will include 11 Ukrainian acts, opening with last year's winners Kalush Orchestra.
We would like to say, please vote for our Ukrainian band. Don't forget about Ukraine and keep supporting us.
But this wouldn't be a party without the prospect of some skirt ripping.
None of us will ever forget. You know, we can remember every minute of it, and it'll be the same for them. But it's bigger, better, more extraordinary, more flamboyant, more colourful, more fantastic now than it ever was.
Get ready to sing, dance and bask in Eurovision and all its camp pop glory. Liverpool is laying on quite the party. Katie Spencer, Sky News in Liverpool.